Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I'd like to speak about some mental health awareness and advice pertaining to marital problems. I have listened and viewed some videos and audios and discussion between women and particular sisters in our community and brothers also who admits admit that they have mental health. Some of them have said they suffer from depression or has been diagnosed for having bipolar, and bipolar is classified as manic depression. And I have heard some sisters and brothers who have talked about them marrying, divorcing. And I heard a lot of conversations and discussion over the years about this topic, their relationships with individuals, and they keep on getting divorced, marry and divorce, married and divorce. And I have come to the conclusion from some of my personal research or investigation and listening in to people talking about these topics, and people have came to me as an imam and have marital problems or relationship problems and can't stay married. I like to give a little bit of advice. The reality of being diagnosed by a doctor and having bipolar or suffering from depression or manic depression, which is clinically called bipolar. I witnessed somebody talk about black men and having issues with black men and not able to be married and stay married. And I heard this argument from many sisters or black American sisters. And some of the arguments of the sisters that I heard, who I personally know or heard them speak about this matter, many of them have shared publicly that they suffer from mental health. They've been diagnosed with bipolar. And most likely, when a doctor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or therapist diagnosed a person with being bipolar, you'll also most likely have other um, other positive symptoms of schizophrenia, right? So usually when people are diagnosed with being bipolar, they are also diagnosed with having the positive symptoms of also schizophrenia. Now, both of these issues being having bipolar and schizophrenia, this makes the person very delusional. All right, they're very delusional. Their grip on reality or the realization of a situation or a thing is diminished by having this mental health issue. And it has been recorded by those in the medical field, in the mental health field, that people who are suffer from manic depression, that they have relationship problems. That majority of them do not have a positive relationship unless they get treatment, unless they get therapy, and their partner also understands some mental health awareness so they know how to deal with that person who has been diagnosed with bipolar and schizophrenia or schizophrenia. If you are a sister or a brother and you have been diagnosed by a medical health physician practitioner of being schizophrenia or having bipolar, you're talking about how men are not good, or you've been into a certain amount of marriages, certain type of people, and the marriages is never good and things like that. Let's be clear. If you've been diagnosed with bipolar, which is manic depression, You most likely been also diagnosed with schizophrenia, that you're most likely was going to be a person who's in and out of marriages, in and out of relationships. So sometimes I have find sisters, especially women, particular women, especially in the black community, black sisters, they like to dog out men. And I have met a few sisters who like to dog out black men in general. And few of them I met who I sat down and talked to, who came to the masjid to share some of their problems, and have mentioned about them being diagnosed with um, depression or manic depression, or like I said, bipolar. They have relationship problems with any man from any race. I know few situations, a few sisters I met that because they never got treatment and they just keep on going and going and going, getting married, divorced, married, divorced. Likewise, brothers, men I have met who have been diagnosed with being suffering from depression or being bipolar, and they also get married and divorced, married and divorced, married and divorced. If you've been diagnosed with this type of illness, you shouldn't give people marital advice. I like to say that. And people who listen to people talk about marriage or marital advice, you really need to know the mental state of this person. If this person openly say they suffer from depression, they've been diagnosed with depression, or been diagnosed with having bipolar or schizophrenia, anybody who's been diagnosed by a mental health um, physician, most likely they diagnosed them also along with bipolar schizophrenia, and is a clear example. They most likely have positive symptoms, which means that they have all the symptoms of a particular illness, and being and having bipolar and having schizophrenia that affects the person's reality. They don't they don't have a grip on the real reality of things, and this is why their relationships would never last. There's a lot of documentary, there's a lot of research by the mental health um, practitioners on people who have manic depression or schizophrenia, and how they have bad relationships, and the reason why they have bad relationships with people is due to their mental health states, and they're not able to realize certain things. So most likely for the women I see you talk like this, a lot of them they're not good in choosing spouses because they don't have a grip on reality. And if they do have come with meeting the right spouse, and if they have this mental health issue and it's not being they're not getting help for it, most likely their relationships, whoever they meet, whoever new person they meet, it's not going to last. Usually the mental health issue is be the main cause of divorce, right? Is the main cause of misunderstandings in the relationship. It's going to be the main cause of broken houses, broken homes. We have a lot of that, unfortunately, in the community. But a lot of those factors about these divorce, or the women who don't want to marry men or keep on getting married and divorced, or men keep on getting married and divorced, a lot of times you got to look at yourself and your mental state, especially if you've been diagnosed with this type of mental health issue. If you've been diagnosed with this type of mental health issue, don't give people marital advice unless you're going to talk about coping skills with having this mental illness, coping skills, and how to have a successful marriage or relationship with being bipolar and schizophrenia, and how to have a relationship through clinical help, through a mental health profession, and how this partner will have to take um, some steps and some lessons on dealing with a spouse who has mental health, especially who've been diagnosed with bipolar and schizophrenia. I like to say that. I like to put this out there because there's a lot of, I see a lot of sisters on Facebook, on social media, and some of them who talk about they have mental health problems or they've been diagnosed with bipolar, and then they talk about how they've been diagnosed with this and they had it for many years and didn't know and things like that. Then they start talking about and other talks about men are no good, or black men are no good, or men from this community are no good, or they had a lot of divorce. Letting you know, if you've been married and divorced and you've been diagnosed with manic depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, that is probably one of the main factor on why you're not married or you keep on divorcing. That's going to be one of the main factors in why your relationships don't last. And likewise with the men. If you've been diagnosed with manic depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, and you're marrying a lot, you're divorcing a lot of sisters, you're marrying a lot of sisters, and you're not getting treatment, or you're not accepting the diagnosis, and you're not just getting that proper care and understanding, most likely you as a man will also get in a lot of marital problems, marriage and divorce. This is very common in the inner cities. It's very common also with blacks and in the inner cities where the mental health has, mental health issues are really severe, right? Because sometimes a climate or environment or situations cause people to have mental health issues, or people are genetically, it runs in their family, and it happens to them at a certain age in life. It could be older in your life, it could be in your 30s or your 40s, right, or in your 20s. It could be something that's running in your family and you just don't know, or you're not aware of it, or it could be because the situation that you in, stressful situations, a lot of trauma, like this could have a person have mental health issues. There's a lot of things that are geared towards people having mental health issues, even people who doesn't have mental health and issues in their family, right? But if you're somebody, I want to put it out there, if you're somebody who's been diagnosed with bipolar, most likely you've been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Most likely, right? If you be, usually doctors, psychologists, they don't diagnose person with one. If you're bipolar, there's something along else with bipolar. Usually, people who have bipolar suffer from schizo or schizophrenia. Either or, they suffer from that also, and that cause an issue in the person reality on dealing with real things or reality. The impression of reality to them is diminished a lot. So be very mindful, right? Be very mindful when you talk about marital problems or marital things or been divorced a lot and trying to talk and put the blame on other people's. This is something that we really have to talk about and address. You know, People who openly mention about mental health issues most likely it's not going to have a successful marriage or relationship if they not never got treatment, you know, or they was misdiagnosed. They was misdiagnosed, meaning that it came up later on in life, but they had this for many years and never got it treated, right? And they might say, "Well, I'm fine, I'm okay," but their relationships with people say something else. Usually, people who are bipolar, they don't have good relationships with people anyway. They can't keep long-term relationships with people due to their mental health. They might say things, do things that are not there. They might claim people to do things, so did things to them and said things to them that they never said or did, and then people will start backing off of them. And likewise, when they get into a marriage issue, then it is another issue with a more serious issue. Always have trust issues. Always thinking the other spouse is cheating on them. Uh, have like very paranoid or understand things the wrong way, things like that. And there's a lot of other issues that go on with being bipolar, depression, and schizophrenia or schizo, right? Because schizo really is a personality disorder, right? But it's very important that when people, if you're, a lot of us, even on social media, we listen to people talk about marital things and their relationships and bad relationships, And if you hear people talk about that and they always in the negative, and they hear them mention that they're bipolar or they have mental health issues and they're bipolar, know for a fact that's not a person you would take any advice for about marriage. Because if what they saying is always negative, negative, and they always marrying and divorce, a lot of a majority of the time it's because of their mental health status, and they always going to blame it on somebody else, going to blame it on a man. If you're marrying two, three times, four times, and sometimes somewhere down the line you got to put the blame on yourself, right? And sometimes people who have mental health issues or are in denial, they don't want to get treatment. Sometimes people who've been diagnosed or going through the treatment, sometimes they still are suffering. Even if they're getting mental health treatments, they're learning how to cope with their mental illness. They still are struggling, and sometimes they also don't have successful relationships. So I hope this advice will reach those who need to hear it, inshallah.